Hello, I'm Petra. I'm a member of the Franciscan community of Our Lady of Compassion. This is my third, discussion, exploration of prayer. I'd meant to post it yesterday, but the day just went a bit pear-shaped and I didn't get to it. So here I am. And I thought today we could look at what's sometimes called imaginative prayer, sometimes called discursive meditation. It might be called other things as well. It's a kind of prayer where we look at a scripture passage, usually from the Gospels, but not entirely. There are some beautiful passages from the Old Testament that can equally well be used. And we look at this passage and pray with it in a way where we try and imagine ourselves in the scene. So you place yourself into the situation that you're reading about, that you're praying about, and you let your imagination lead you into a deeper form of prayer. And it can be very, very moving for those who've never tried it. It can be a really beautiful form of prayer, which then leads us into a kind of dialogue with Jesus, with God, and often leads to quite deep insights as well. And something usually comes out of it that you're not expecting. Even when you pray with a passage that seems really familiar at the beginning, you might think, well, what new can I learn from this? But it's quite interesting what comes from it. So it's a kind of prayer that I'd encourage you to try if you've not tried it before. It's not a new kind of way of praying. I think it's been around for hundreds of years. Actually, it's based on the idea on the prayers, the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius of Loyola, and that's 16th century. It might have been going a long time before that, and maybe he just adapted a form of prayer that was being well used and was very familiar. I don't know, but it's certainly not something newfangled. It's a traditional way of praying that's been around for a long time, and it's very beautiful. So basically, what we can do is I'm going to actually lead a kind of shortened version of this prayer. So once I start the prayer, if at any point you feel I'm moving too quickly, because obviously for the sake of the video I'm not going to give long periods of silence, I'll just give shorter periods of silence. So if at any point while you're working through this and praying this you'd like to spend a bit longer, you can just pause the video and spend a bit more time with that part, and then just press play again and continue. So basically the structure works like this, especially if you're praying it on your own. What I would do if I was praying it, I would find a passage of scripture, which sometimes I might wait for a piece to be given to me, like the Gospel of the day, or sometimes I might feel I really want to pray with this passage, and I would pray with whatever was given to me. If you've ever been on an individually directed retreat, a guided retreat, your spiritual director often gives you a passage, so you don't know what you're going to get, and you're just given a passage to pray with. So you've chosen your passage. The first thing I would do is just sit and calm and become aware that I'm in God's presence, that God is with me, and just make a heartfelt prayer in my heart, asking God to speak to me through this passage of scripture. And then what I would usually do is I would read the passage quite slowly. And my first thing would be, which character do I feel drawn to? Because it works, I find it works better if you really immerse yourself in the passage, in the story, and become one of the characters in your imagination. So the passage I'm going to pray with today is about Zacchaeus, the little man who climbs the sycamore tree. So you might think, I'll choose to be Zacchaeus. I'm going to see it all imagine it from his perspective. Or you might be drawn to imagining that you're one of the disciples. Or you might prefer just to be somebody in the crowd who's watching the scene. As the passage unfolds, as you read it, just try and familiarise yourself with it and enter into the story. I'm going to read it twice quite slowly. So what I would suggest you do is, when you're listening to the story and imagining yourself as one of the characters, really put yourself there in your imagination. So think to yourself, what can I hear? Is it a very noisy crowd? Is it quiet? What can I see? Can I smell anything? Is it hot? Are there people crowding in on me? So really use your senses and your imagination to get as much into the scene as you can, to really let yourself become part of the story, become part of the scene. And then when I've finished the story and we get to the end of the passage, I'll leave a period of silence. So I'm going to read it once for you just to get the flavour of it. Then I shall read it again, and the second time I'd like you to try and really enter into the scene. Use your senses, imagine what it's like to actually be there. And then I'll leave a longer period of silence at the end. And during that silence at the end, see if there are any emotions that have come up for you while you've been imagining this scene. Do you feel joyful? Do you feel angry? Maybe you're jealous. Jesus goes to this man's house, why not to me? Maybe you're angry. How could he do this? I think it says in the passage that, the crowd are angry because he's gone to they're complaining because he's gone to the house of a sinner, of a tax collector. So just see what emotions come up for you. Are you joyful? If you're Zacchaeus, are you full of remorse, gratitude? What emotions come up for you while you're meditating and praying with this scene? And then at the end, when I've finished reading, bring these emotions, whatever they are, bring them to God and talk to Jesus about them. See whatever you're feeling. If you're feeling really grateful and happy and joyful, share that with God. And if you're feeling a bit jealous or a bit angry or a bit complaining, bring that to God and explain why you're feeling like that. I felt really angry there because why did you choose that man? I felt left out. Whatever it is, just express it very simply to God in prayer. And then after a bit of time for that, there's time to come and just thank God for whatever emotions or feelings or ideas or insights you've had through the prayer. Bring that to God and thank him in a spirit of gratitude. Each of these parts of the prayer can last as long as you want them to. Sometimes you can pray for a whole hour with a passage of scripture. And often at the end of praying like this, I would often write down whatever insight or thoughts or feelings have come out. I keep a prayer journal or a journal, and I write in that as often as I can. And often I write down insights and thoughts that have come through prayer because it's so easy to forget them. We're human, life takes over, and we forget all these insights. So write them down. Write them down so that you can look back at it the next day or the next week, or next time you pray with that passage, it might be completely different. So have a thought about keeping it some kind of journal that you can write down these things. So I'd like to try it. If you've not done it before, it's a great way to just try it and see what you think. So I'll read the passage once, and then I'll read it again more slowly. So the first time just familiarise yourself again with the story. And then the second time, I'd like you to try and enter into the story as I read it. And then I'll leave a gap at the end so that we can just pray about that. And then I'll bring it to some kind of conclusion. And you can let me know what you think. Okay. So the story is from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 19, verse 1 to 10. Jesus entered Jericho and was going through the town when a man whose name was Zacchaeus made his appearance. He was one of the senior tax collectors and a wealthy man. He was anxious to see what kind of man Jesus was, but he was too short and could not see him for the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore tree to catch a glimpse of Jesus, who was to pass that way. When Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and spoke to him. "Zacchaeus, come down. Hurry, because I must stay at your house today." And he hurried down and welcomed him joyfully. They all complained when they saw what was happening. "He has gone to stay at a sinner's house," they said. But Zacchaeus stood his ground and said to the Lord, "Look, sir, I am going to give half my property to the poor. And if I have cheated anybody, I will pay him back 4 times the amount." And Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, because this man too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man has come to seek out and save what was lost." So now that we're a bit more familiar with the story, I'll read it again, a bit more slowly. And then at the end, we'll just have a period of silence. But as I say, see if you can enter into it in your imagination. Imagine yourself there and see what emotions and what feelings come up for you. Okay. Jesus entered Jericho and was going through the town, when a man whose... That's my phone ringing. I'm just going to wait until it stops. Okay, before we start again, let's just try to enter into a spirit of prayer. So, we'll try and find a nice, comfortable position. I forgot to do this beforehand, so it's probably just as well the phone rang. Okay. So we try and find a nice, comfortable position where you can sit upright but feel quite alert, so that you don't fall asleep. Though actually, I have to confess, I do fall asleep in prayer, and I don't think it's a bad thing, because I think if we need that much rest and we can rest in God's arms, then that's not bad. So just sit comfortably, maybe close your eyes. Take a few deep breaths. And just allow yourself to become aware of your breath in your body. And allow yourself to become aware of how close you are to God. Invite God to be with you. If you can't feel His presence, just say, "Be with me, Lord, and help me to know you're with me." And when you've reached a place of calm, then I'll read the book. Jesus entered Jericho and was going through the town, when a man whose name was Zacchaeus made his appearance. He was one of the senior tax collectors and a wealthy man. He was anxious to see what kind of man Jesus was, but he was too short and could not see him for the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore tree to catch a glimpse of Jesus, who was to pass that way. When Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and spoke to him. "Zacchaeus, come down. Hurry, because I must stay at your house today." And he hurried down and welcomed him joyfully. They all complained when they saw what was happening. "He has gone to stay at a sinner's house," they said. But Zacchaeus stood his ground and said to the Lord, "Look, sir, I am going to give half my property to the poor. And if I have cheated anybody, I will pay him back 4 times the amount." And Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, because this man too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man has come to seek out and save what was lost." So when you've had a chance to pray with that passage and it feels like it's time to move on, see what thoughts and emotions it's brought for you. See what things it's helped you think about. For me, I love that passage because I'm really short. I'm only about 4'11", so I can really relate to Zacchaeus and not being able to see. So I was imagining myself as Zacchaeus and trying to see over the crowd. I've often had that experience. And it made me think, he runs ahead and climbs a tree, and although he's a short man, he's a man of a certain position in society. And even if people don't like him, he's probably not the kind of person you would expect to climb a tree. So he puts himself out and into a kind of embarrassing position, I think, by climbing a tree. And my thought was that he's looking, and he doesn't really expect Jesus to stop and speak to him. He just wants to see what's going on. He just wants to see this man that everyone's been talking about. And then Jesus comes along and stops and looks at him. And that's the bit that I prayed with, when Jesus looks at Zacchaeus. So in my prayer, Jesus looks at me, and I just sat with that. That was where I felt most drawn to sit. So what happened for you? Where did you feel drawn to sit? At which point do you feel God spoke to you? Did you have any emotions come up? Did you feel happy? Did you feel a bit angry at Zacchaeus? Did you feel nothing? Did you find it hard to get into? Do you find imaginative prayer difficult? Even that, pray about that to God too. It doesn't matter if you find it hard. It's not like you can pass or fail. It's just an experience to try and enter into it and see what happens. See if God speaks to you in that way. See if you feel closer to God in that way, closer to Jesus. That's what it's all about, just building our relationship with Jesus. But share what happened to you, if anything, and take the passage away and try it again on your own when you can give it a really nice long period of time without phone interruptions if you're lucky. And if you have any other ideas, just share them. It would be good to know what you think. And then at the end of your prayer time, bring it to Jesus and bring it to God. Just thank him for that time, for anything that's come up. And hopefully it might be a way of praying that you fancy trying again. It's good to experiment and try different forms of prayer. It's all about just being with God, just being in relationship and spending time together, and that's the main thing. But let me know what you think. Let me know what you think, and hopefully we'll look at something different next week. Blessings.